We're told that perimenopause is the end of desire, that once our hormones change, our passion disappears. But what if the truth is actually the opposite? What if midlife is the moment your real erotic self finally wakes up, the one that burns not from performance, but from presence? In this week's episode of Reproductive Rebel, I am joined by somatic sex educator Xanet Pailet to explore how our sexuality evolves through the shifts of perimenopause and how to rekindle the heartfire that lives beneath the surface of it all. Because pleasure doesn't fade, it transforms. Hi, I'm Adrienne Irizarry. I'm an East Asian medicine practitioner who is passionate about women's health and helping women to live their best lives. My goal is to put you in the driver's seat of your health, offering holistic solutions for a symptom-free life. Statements made in this program are for educational purposes only and not intended as a substitution for medical consultation or advice. We do not claim to diagnose, treat, or cure any diseases. This podcast is inclusive and welcomes all gender identities. The focus of the program is on biological function, and we will use the term women throughout, but it is referencing physiological and social challenges for biology, not identity. Come as you are, I am happy you're here and welcome all performances of identity. I hope you find something helpful in this show. Welcome back to another episode of the Reproductive Rebel podcast. I am joined today by sex and intimacy educator and coach, Xanet Pailet. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adrienne. I am so delighted to be here and have this conversation with you and help your listeners learn how to improve their sex life.
Oh, it's such an important topic. And I feel like it's one that I get so many questions about, to the point where I've wondered if it's important for me to start pulling into my work, quite frankly, because I get a ton of questions, primarily in that like early doorstep and just entering the perimenopausal years of a woman's life, because we undergo this huge transformation. Yes, there's this big hormonal thing that's happening in the background, but the other piece of it is like you're stepping into this authentic version of you where you are a little less people-pleasing, you care a little bit less about what other people think and stepping into your truth, but then also at a time where you're starting to come face-to-face with, oh, I'm actually aging now. And some women say they start feeling invisible because they're no longer that youthful, ideal, blah, blah, blah. And so it's an interesting intersection in a woman's life. And I'm so excited to have you on to talk about that today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be able to talk about it with you.
So for those who are not familiar with the fact that you already have a book out and you do this amazing work, share with our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So I am a sex and intimacy educator and coach, and I really focus on both helping women be able to experience acceptance and love of their body, to experience pleasure in their body, to overcome sexual challenges and sexual traumas. I'm also a certified somatic experiencing trauma practitioner as well. And I'll tell you a little bit about my background because it's a little unusual. I've not always done this. In fact, I'm a healthcare lawyer by training.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I have a lot of firsthand knowledge experience of what it's like to have sexual challenges in your relationship and in your body, because I lived in a sexless marriage for 26 years.
Oh, wow.
And I had a lot of my own trauma as a child around sexuality. It wasn't abuse, thankfully, but it was a lot of shaming, a lot of sexual shame. And we know now that sexual shame is a trauma, a real trauma for sure, which caused a lot of disconnection with my body and my sexuality, which caused me to have very painful sex when I did have sex. And I ended up with vaginismus, which is, the tightening of the vaginal muscles, which made any type of insertion very, very painful. Mm-hmm. And while I had 2 children, I still have them. They're adults with their own children now. Pretty much gave up having sex after about the age of 30, well before I hit perimenopause, because there was just a lot of drama. Mm-hmm. And I felt, very broken, and it caused a lot of discontent in the marriage as well. And for me, it was kind of a blessing at the time to give it up, because it was just complicated, which happens a lot, right? When your body is just trying to be in a protective mode. I had tons of UTIs, and then I had medical trauma at the hands of urologists, and I had tons of yeast infections. And I think this was all my body just saying like, nope, this isn't right. Stop. I'm just trying to protect you. But it made me very, very angry with my body. Right. And so I was furious and felt so disconnected and disembodied, which I think is very, very common when you're feeling broken around your sexuality, no matter how it actually ended up showing up. And so ultimately, my now ex-husband and I, we ended up like sleeping in separate beds for 15 years. And the relationship, to the extent we had intimacy, just totally disintegrated. And at the age of 50, so I'm 65 now, at the age of 50, I left the marriage. And I also needed to start taking a hard look at my sexuality because, I was young. I mean, I'd gone through menopause at that point, but I was young, and I'm a very relationship driven person. And I knew I would want to date and maybe even get married again. But I didn't know what to do with the fact that I hated sex. I didn't know how that was going to show up, if you will.
Yeah.
And it was a very, very scary thing for me. And so I was like, shoot, now I really have to deal with this. This is something I have to take a really hard look at. And I did. And I started down this road of sexual healing, initially through the doors of Tantra and sacred sexuality, which for me was very powerful. And then it opened up a lot of other doors in the world of sex because, I'm a student, right? I'm one of those persons. I just need to know everything. And so while I learned a lot about Tantra in that world, I was like, okay, now what else do I need to know? Oh, I need to understand the psychology of sex. I need to understand trauma. I need to understand what somatics is. I just need, I'm a holistic pelvic care practitioner. What other tool can I have in my toolbox so that I can really, truly understand the challenges that people are going through and how to help them? And that's what I do now. I primarily work with some women, but I do a lot of work with couples and helping them overcome sexless marriages and challenges in their relationships.
That's so important. That work is so important. I can't tell you the number of women that have walked through my doors that are essentially I'm hoping that what you do can help the fact that I'm on a brink of a divorce because, I'm having a hard time being intimate. I'm having a hard time to connect. I feel the word that you used that stuck out to me was disembodied. And I think it's so important that people realize that with disembodiment, there's a disempowerment that comes with it. And, whether it's an intimacy issue or a chronic illness of some sort, there's this feeling of betrayal. That your body isn't showing up for you the way that you need it to. And it can make you feel really helpless and hopeless. And so I just really want to celebrate what it is that you do for work. It is so important.
So blessed to be able to get up every day and know that I'm making a difference in people's lives in a huge, huge way. So thank you for that.
Yeah. I resonate
and for the
with
work
that deeply.
That you do, right? Because you're so in this area as well. And I know you're deepening your expertise as well. So
absolutely. Well, it doesn't help that we have been raised and saturated in such a Puritan foundational culture that there is such a stigma around sexuality and the fact that women are sexual beings. We have that whole myriad of dualities, right? You're supposed to be a lady in the street and a freak in the bed. Yeah, I'm quoting a song, but it's true, right? Like that's something that people can really relate to. It's like, oh, I'm supposed to be a tiger behind doors, but like I'm supposed to wear turtlenecks and be covered from tip to stern on the outside of my house. And if you want to embrace your turn on, you get shamed for that. And so like, because we have all of these mixed messages around being female, femininity, the performance of the feminine identity, it creates a lot of angst.
Yes,
for women. Sure. And that in and of itself can like shut a person down.
Yeah, absolutely. Like all of the messages that we received, I call it your sexual blueprint, right? All of the messages that we received as young adults, right? From parents, from culture, from whoever, religion, big one.
Right? It's a big one.
Big one. Really has an impact on what our adult views are and belief systems are around our sexuality. And it does shut people down all the time. Like you see it and I see it, all the time. How many people come into this office and say like, well, I was raised in this very like conservative Christian world and I was shamed for touching myself. And like, how do I find my sexy because I don't feel like I'm supposed to do that? Or alternatively, I was raised in this very conservative Orthodox, Jewish Orthodox. I've worked with a lot of Orthodox women as well, where we weren't really educated at all. And then all of a sudden, right, we're supposed to have this amazing sex when we've been shamed about it our entire lives. And I'm like, yeah, your body is so confused. Yeah. Right. It doesn't know what to do. And everything you said is true. We live in the most sex negative society that is so sexualized.
Yes. Oh, that's a beautiful way to word it. Man, isn't that true? We know how to objectify with the best of them,
Absolutely.
But we don't know how to have a positive, healthy relationship over a natural biological function.
Correct. Right.
So one of the things that I wanted to bring into this conversation and why I was so excited that Xanet reached out to me is that I have been having so many women that are like 38 and older that are walking into this phase of their life with these stories that we've been talking about, whether it's been because of religious upbringing or familial expectation setting or whatever. And then they hit this transition point in their life, right? Maybe they've done the sex thing because of the biological reproductive, I need to have a family function, but there's no intrinsic satisfaction there. Maybe they still haven't even figured out that they can orgasm yet. It still, to this day, for some reason, blows my mind. And I don't know why this blows my mind, but it does. The number of women who are in their late 30s, early 40s, and they still don't know what it's like to have an orgasm.
They've been faking it all this time.
Yes. And which is horribly sad on a lot of levels. But at the same time, like it's very disempowering. And it goes back to that disembodied aspect of things, right?
Absolutely.
Like you're there and you're like going through the motions, but like there isn't anything in it for you other than preventing a fight or keeping the peace or, well, that was nice. And I'm glad that I was like close with my partner, but it feels like orgasm and that kind of really deep energetic connection with your partner is like a myth or a unicorn that like doesn't really exist. And I have this conversation a lot with clients. So then when they get to like perimenopause, okay, so I'm talking late 30s, early 40s, and the hormones are just starting to murmur that there's a transition happening.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, not only have you hit the more outspoken stage of your life, but also you're like, well, hold on, there's got to be more here. Am I experiencing this because my hormones are shifting? What is it that's making this so unsatisfying for me? Right. And no, I don't want to just dance monkey and perform like you've wanted me to. And then that creates friction in relationships. So let's talk about perimenopause and sexuality and this idea that the libido gets quiet. I don't know that I totally believe that.
Right. So I want to just roll back a little bit. I want to talk about something that you said, which I think is really important for women to understand, right? There's like different stages of sexuality. There's the like new relationship energy stage where the hormones are just like pulsing through your body and all you want to do is have sex over and over and over again. And really that's Mother Nature's way, right, of making sure that procreation happens. That's what really new relationship energy is. And then there's the next phase of a sexual relationship. And what you're talking about is really validation sex, right? Where you're continuing to have sex to perform, to validate that the relationship is okay, that your partner isn't going to leave you for somebody else, that, you know, you're a good wife, good mother, right? And I think this is what happens. Many, many couples stay in this validation sex period for their entire relationship, right? This is a very performative stage of sex. This is where you're faking orgasms if you're not having orgasms right and left because you want your partner to think that they're doing a good job and that they're pleasing you or that you're a good girl and you can perform, right? But it's a very performative stage of sex and it is not satisfying at the end of the day, right? At some point, and yeah, I think, you know, we know that, look, when kids come into the equation, they mess up people's sex lives, right? Which is another conversation. But you know, when you're starting to hit that perimenopause stage and your hormones are starting, what did you say? Like talking to you a little bit. I like that. They're starting to like, oh, there's something going on here. And yeah, maybe you get more in that, like, I'm getting older, I'm going to fucking do it. Sorry, can I say that word here?
Absolutely. We swear for emphasis and clarity on that, okay. On this show. Absolutely. Let it go.
I fucking do what I want to do here, right? Yeah. Like, I'm sick of like all of the constraints that have been put upon me by my partner, by society, whatever. And trust me, when you get into your 60s, it's even way more, right? Which is what I'm going to look forward to. Like, I don't give a shit what anybody else says. I'm going to do what I want to do kind of thing. Become a little more narcissistic in a good way, in the best of ways.
The book Bitter or Better, I Decide by Hannah Koch is a practical and uplifting guide to turning life challenges into stepping stones. Bitter or Better shows how to understand yourself, resolve conflict, strengthen relationships, and reconnect with the source of love so you can choose better, not bitter, every day. For more information, go to bitterorbetteridecide.com.
You start to maybe recognize like, oh, yes, that's the question. Is this all there is? Really, you know, is this all there is? Is this really what my connection feels like? Is this really what this marriage is going to feel like? You know, I'm 38 years old and I'm looking at this person for another 40 years or 30 years. And I'm like, oh my God, can I do this? Right? It's a very common question that women start asking themselves as well. And so I just want to emphasize that most importantly, like there is another phase of sex. And what I write about in my book, it's called, you know, passionate intimacy. It's actually the connection phase of sex. And that's available at any point, right? And actually, we want to get to that place a lot sooner than in perimenopause. So I just want you all to know there's a whole deeper place that you can go. You just have to have some tools and training to be able to go there. But it makes total sense that at this stage in life, women start questioning the relationship and questioning what's happening, especially if they're not having orgasms, right? Because then they're not really having pleasure. And then you're just like, what is going on here? I totally understand that. So I want to talk about one of the things that happens hormonally, because this is very important in terms of what we start seeing in perimenopause. So as, you know, women's estrogen starts to drop, which happens normally as we age, you know, when we're in our 20s, like our estrogen's pretty high, right? And that is typically the peak of some of our sexual activity. But as our hormones start to drop, our desire, because we have less estrogen in our body and there's less about balance, our desire starts to shift. from the spontaneous, like, oh, I saw this hot person, or maybe I saw my partner, walk in the room and like, he looks really good. And I'm like, oh, I'm kind of horny. I want to have sex, right? To what we call more of a responsive desire. And this is a very normal experience. And I really want to say that again, this is a very normal experience that women have as they go through perimenopause. And it ends up feeling like, oh, I don't really want to have sex. It's more like, I'm not really thinking about it. This is what I hear from many of my clients. Like, it's just not been on my radar. But here's what happens with responsive desire. If your body starts getting touched in a way that feels good for you, right? And arousal activity starts to happen, your desire actually starts to kick in because the oxytocin, the dopamine, the hormones start to actually activate your system, and then arousal will start to kick in. It may be very different. You may need a lot longer time to get to that point of being really turned on and aroused. But it's a very common experience. It is actually how our bodies shift over time, especially in the context of long-term relationships.
So this kind of change in response actually can happen long before your hormones begin to change, if it's in a long-term relationship.
But it tends to track with hormonal changes.
That makes sense.
It tracks more with aging and hormonal changes. The one caveat I would say, and this is one of the myths, right? The one caveat I would say is I've seen a lot of women in their 40s, newly divorced, had no desire for sex with their partner, newly divorced, met some other man, and all of a sudden their desire comes roaring back, right? And again, that's because the new relationship energy overrides everything else. Gotcha. Including the lowered estrogen. This is true in your 60s and 70s as well. Like, it's the same kind of thing. And then you flip back into more of the responsive desire.
That's really good to know. So if sex hasn't been really great up until this point, you have this perfect storm of long-term relationship meets hormonal changes. And it sounds like this is a big driver behind why divorce rates are so high during this time frame.
Well, there's also the empty nest syndrome, which, depending upon what age you're at, is also definitely, comes into play here. But yes, that's, I think, one of the myths that we deal with in menopause and perimenopause. Is that, yes, our desire changes, but if you've had bad sex, which most people have had bad sex, most women have had bad sex, it's kind of like the perfect excuse to be able to say, yeah, I'm kind of like going through the change, I'm just not feeling it, right?
At this point, I'm sure there are people nodding and listening to this and going, yep, this is totally my life. How do I turn the Titanic? Yes. Where would you recommend people begin to try and change their experience with this? Because they do want to have connection with self and reclaim their turn on and feel the most enlivened version of who they are, because this is also a very powerful time in your life for stepping into your truth.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think how to improve your sex life, which is something I talk about all the time and actually have like a whole video series on it that I'm going to give to your audience. And it's amazing at the end. But that's an important piece of it, right? Is understanding, and I think most people don't understand this, that creating a good sex life at some level are just new skills and tools that you can learn, right? Because who taught you how to have sex? Anybody? Who taught your partner how to touch your clitoris and give you an orgasm? Who taught you how to touch yourself and give you an orgasm, right? Like these days, a lot of men in particular are learning it through porn. Right. And as we know, that is a completely unrealistic way to have sex. That is not what women's bodies want. That's not what they like. They don't just want like penetration in every single hole, an orifice. Like that's not sex, but that's happening a lot, right? And so like taking a step back and just saying like, oh, yeah, maybe there are tools that we can learn as a couple that will allow us to really begin to start to connect with each other. And a lot of it is, and this is actually moving into what I said, passionate intimacy, that third stage of sex, of really deep connection. Sex is about slowing everything down, because so often one of the reasons women are having bad sex is because it happens so fast. I will tell you that the average amount of, quote, foreplay, if there's foreplay at all in most couples' sex lives, is about 5 to 7 minutes, right? That's about average, right? 5 to 7 minutes isn't anywhere close to what a woman actually needs to get aroused, especially once they're past their 20s and into their 30s. That's not how women's arousal works. Right? And I think I talk about this in the video, you have to understand the difference between men's arousal and women's arousal. And because it makes sense to me, men believe that when you touch my cock, I get hard. So when I touch your clit, you get hard, right? Not the way it goes, right? But we understand why they have that belief, because of their own arousal experience. And not really understanding that for women, 5% of our arousal equipment is worn on the outside of our body, which is the tip of our clitoris and the shaft and our nipples. And that's it.
Right.
And for men, they've been living with a penis. Well, they've been touching themselves since they came out of the womb. And right?
It's so true.
It's so true. And little babies get tiny little erections. That happens too, right? So they have a very, very different experience with what arousal feels like and the time it takes to get there. And so if they haven't been educated and they're not aware, and if we as women, maybe we know, I'm not really getting turned on, but I don't understand why I'm getting turned on. That's one of the biggest questions that women will tell me all the time. It's I just don't know what I want. I don't understand my own arousal pathway. I just know what they're doing is not working.
Yeah.
Right. So really starting to understand that, people fall off the couch when I say this to them. But it's true. Women need 30 minutes to 45 minutes to really get to the point where they're ready for penetration and really at their highest level of arousal.
Yeah.
And for most couples, they don't even know what to do for 30 to 45 minutes. They have no idea what to do.
It's true. And during this time frame, if your partner is more of a peer, age-wise, erection qualities start changing after 40, stamina changes after 40.
Absolutely.
So even for male-bodied partners, you're still looking at they're starting to go through their own andropausal changes,
right,
which happens more incrementally and it's more subtle, right? So they still pretty much, until they start asking the questions of, is this as good as it's going to get? They are very much oh, well, everything's still the same for me. Oh, well, maybe I'm a little more sensitive than I used to be.
Right.
And they're not even really kind of coming face to face with the fact that their body is also changing,
right,
which affects the way that intimate connections can be built.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true as well. And we see that a lot, right? They lose it's normal for a man to lose an erection. It happens all the time. Erections come in and out, especially as they age. But a lot of men freak out when that happens.
Yes.
Right. And yes. And for some men as they age, again, kind of depending on what their turn on is, they also may need more touch. Right. They also may need more of an arousal, a longer arousal runway than what they've needed in the past. But you've got to learn this. They've got to be educated about it and understand that it's normal. And then what do I do? This is literally what men will say to me. What do we do for 30 minutes, Xanet? I don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That it's not going to, how long can I make out with her? Am I supposed to go down on her for 45, And I'm well, if you do that for 45 minutes, that might not work either, because her nerve endings are going to start to numb out, right? So couples need to learn there's all of these different ways to touch each other and how to build arousal up and bring it down and tease each other and continue to really build the erotic energy. And nobody teaches you that either. I mean, it kind of feels normal in the new relationship energy stage because the charge is there so much, right? Mm-hmm. But that falls away. And so really learning that there's a lot of tools and skills, like there's nothing that you can't learn. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anybody can become a better lover. You know, we can teach anybody to become a better lover by learning new skills and understanding how to touch your partner and understanding different ways of touch and all sorts of different perspectives by slowing everything down. I think that's probably number one on my little video series is slow everything down. Yeah. You've got to slow down. I mean, there's a lot of, when you slow things down, you can feel more. You can be more present with your partner, right? Mm-hmm. And we're just talking about the physical side. It's a whole emotional component, which, you know, I write a lot about in this new book, the Sex and Intimacy Repair Kit. But that's a huge piece as well. That's often underlying the sexual challenges that couples are also having.
I love that. Mm-hmm. So if you were to make one starting point suggestion for couples so that people can take an action item away. And then we're also going to talk about the fact that your book is open for pre-sale right now. And this is the rest of your how-to, folks. So definitely make sure to check out her book. But if you were to give one piece of advice in terms of getting started and breaking the ice, because often when we're in situations like this, we're starting to stonewall each other out. One feels unheard. The other one is either like quick to ejaculate and then it's over, and then she feels like, well, what about me? Or he's mad because she's not able to meet him in the expediency and how quickly things end up coming to an end. How do you break the ice and begin to have one of these conversations so that you can begin changing the way that your intimate life is showing up?
Well, this is something I spend a lot of time with couples learning how to communicate around sex, because this is probably the biggest barrier to a good sex life.
Yeah,
right?
It makes sense.
Not being able to communicate about what you want, about what feels good, about what doesn't feel good. So there's a number of ways to try this. One thing that I sometimes recommend, especially if communication is hard, is for each person to get a piece of paper and write down, these are the things that feel good to me that I like. And you each get to like write down, you know, I like to have my arms stroked. I like it when we make out, whatever, right? And these are the things that could be better. Not like I don't like, but could be better, right? And then exchange those pieces of paper and have a conversation about that. Like, let's talk about like that. Oh, in the most blame-free, shame-free way that you can actually muster, starting to have that conversation. And, you know, read books, watch videos. Like what I find is like once the door is open, very often one partner is starting to research. Oh, let me find this video. Oh, I found that's how a lot of people find me. And there's lots of support out there, especially now. There's videos, there's people posting on social media, there's lots of workshops that you can read, lots of great books that you can read, lots of resources to be able to start to have that conversation and then start to learn a little bit about what's actually happening in your body and in your partner's body. So that's what I would suggest, starting to have the conversation. But I think the most important thing on the physical side of it, which is what I said before, is to really just like slow everything down. And even like very often my company, Passionate Intimacy Retreats, I run private intimacy retreats, so one-on-one retreats for couples in Asheville, North Carolina, which is where I live. And then I do group retreats as well. But in my private intimacy retreats, and I'm always giving couples home play assignments after a session, one of my most common one that I give them is like, you each get like 20 minutes. And I want you just to like make believe that you're just like playing doctor for the very first time with no expectations and no goals. And that's another big piece, taking all of the expectations and goals off the table and just explore each other's body. Just start to notice, like, if I touch you over under your arm, does that feel good? Does that not feel good? Do you like it? Right? Like, just have this, like, we're doing research and development here.
Yeah.
And just using total beginner's mind as if I've never seen a body before. Because while you've seen a body before, I guarantee you 90% of the time you have not explored your partner's body fully. And your body has not been explored fully. And there's so many erogenous zones on the body that we don't even know where they are.
I love that. So that is such a beautiful first step. Thank you for sharing that with us. So if people are hungry for more information, they are interested in your private sessions, your group sessions, finding you on the internet, how can they learn more about you and this incredible book you have coming out?
All right. Well, they should go to this website, howtoimprovemylovelife.com, where you will find this beautiful free gift of 7 3-minute short little videos with very specific tools and tips that you can use. Because remember, all of this can be learned. And then you'll get information on how to connect with me, how to buy my book. All of that will be forthcoming.
Wonderful. I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your expertise. Xanet has graciously agreed to come back for another episode, and we're going to talk about sexuality as a new mom, particularly when you are becoming a mom in your late 30s, early 40s. So if you haven't subscribed and are following the show, definitely make sure you do so that you don't miss that episode that will be coming out later this year. Thank you again so much for sharing your energy and your wisdom with our show. And until next time, everybody. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Reproductive Rebel. Reproductive Rebel is recorded by certified peri-steam hydrotherapist and acutonics practitioner, herbalist, and Chinese nutritional therapist, Adrienne Irizarry of Moon Essence LLC. If you are interested in setting up an appointment for one-on-one support, ordering from our store, or checking out our course offerings, visit our website at moonessence.life. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter and get insider information on upcoming events and offerings. Join the conversation. Like and follow us at Moon Essence Me on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Your voices make this program possible. Thank you all for your continued support.